Hey, welcome to episode 2 of Sexual Health. And today we are going to just talk all things love, like loving yourself and how do we do this and what does it look like. And I got to say, it was probably one of the hardest things that I have ever done, literally in 43 years of life. So, if you don't know who we are, I'm Dr. B. This is Kelly D. And we are here because we love to empower others. And this specific episode is about sexual health. And so, Kelly, I want to start by asking you what is self love and how did you find it? And teach us all of your beautiful wisdom around it.
Oh, sure. So, self-love to me is allowing myself to feel worthy of that, of course, right? And forgiveness of past experiences
Mm,
and showing myself the kindness and being curious, right? Of,
mhm.
excuse me, what my needs are and what I want for myself, right? So we're not talking about relationships in this part. We're talking about our own self-love. So I don't know if you've ever heard of what your love language is. Have
Mhm.
you ever done
Yeah,
that?
like the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to look it up and find out what it is and do it for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I encourage you to, so mine is physical touch, of
Mm.
course, because I love being touched and I love touching,
Yes.
and also is time. So I like
Quality
having the
time.
time
Yeah.
with people, right? Quality
Yeah,
time.
for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
So that's one thing that I would invite everyone to kind of have fun with, because you can find out what your love language is and you can incorporate it in your
Mm.
everyday,
Ooh, I love
right?
that.
So
Incorporate it, right? Now, do you think that like love language changes or evolves as we change?
I 100% believe that it does, because like we just talked about, is that moving into the direction of who we are becoming, right? So
Hmm.
I think that we evolve and shift all the time, right?
Yes.
So just because this time around, I prefer to be touched, and like
Yeah.
to have that quality time with
Mm.
myself, right? Like we
Hmm.
were talking about earlier about, drinking our coffee in the morning
Yeah.
and being present in there to begin your own day, right? That's the quality time in which I'm
Mm.
talking about, that
Yeah,
I
like it doesn't
create with
have to
myself.
be with someone else.
No,
Yeah, it could be like
no.
quality
This is
time with
all about you,
self.
baby.
Yeah, I
This is
love it. I
all
love it.
about you.
Love it. So if you what she's
Yeah.
saying, I think is what I'm hearing you say is even if you did like mine's access service. I honestly think my second one has like continues to change, but I think access service is always kind of what drives me to feel full within and then therefore feel like just beyond me, like this greater good of like being able to serve
It's
and
part of
be
who you
present.
are
Right.
too. It's part of
Yeah.
what makes you an amazing person, right?
Thanks, love. But that second one I feel like kind of ebbs and flows. And, like, especially with the pandemic, I would think that a lot of people who are touched that didn't get that at the same level or same intensity as they did prior to the
Yeah.
pandemic
The
may
connection,
it
right?
yeah. So it maybe changed their way of how they look at themselves or the world around them or their relationship, right? Like I had a client who her spouse was basically like, you're outside the home working and I'm in the home. I'm not exposed to anything. So when you come home, I don't know how I feel about you just like being all up on me. And they really had to figure out like, what does this look like for us? Because we're used to just having
Yeah.
that intimate connection. And now we have to kind of redesign, realign,
Yeah.
renegotiate. Like, what does this look like for us? Right. And
That's
for
right.
her, kind of feeling that rejection too was this idea of like, how do I serve myself when what's felt familiar, what's always been has changed? Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And just kind of jumping on that whole, like during the pandemic, and it's still happening. I don't know how it is in your neck of the woods, but I live in Canada, so like we're quite aware.
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. Ooh,
But
ooh. I think she just did a little shout out.
That's right.
I love
So,
it.
but the connection component,
Mm,
and I think with everyone, we all kind of lost
yeah.
that sense of self in a way, right? Because our community helps us grow. I remember at one point my son had said to me, "Oh my God, Mom, thank God that, that we live together. I don't think I could have handled
Ah,
being on my
yes.
own."
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even think about it. You just
Mm,
take it for granted that we have each other, thank goodness.
right.
But honestly, people that were on their own, right? Who knows what job that they were in, if they were, massage
Absolutely.
therapists or
Yeah.
something, and they were involved in all of that and weren't able to see their clients or touch them or touch their partner or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
connection I find, and I think that's part of why we wanted to do this too, is to bring back the connection with
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
get people inspired again to get into alignment, get recalibrated,
Mm-hmm.
and start living the life that you want to live, right? And be empowered and
Mm-hmm.
create that connection first with yourself and foremost, as always, right? And then it just dominoes from there.
Yeah. And I like what you
Sorry,
said
I went off
too.
on a tangent
Yeah,
there.
tangents are good. If I'm gonna pull from that, I think, one of the hardest things for me, and especially as an acts of service person and like healthcare provider, so it's like give, do, like right? So like,
Mhm.
wait, what? You want me to like take a moment and like serve myself? Like, are you crazy? Right. So
Yeah,
it's this idea of being able to love and be loved. And I've always gone back to the analogy of if I have coffee and my friend walks in and wants some coffee, if there's nothing left in this mug, I can't give her anything. So for
yeah,
me, for especially at the beginning, I had to come back to that idea of like, I have to fill this up, AKA myself, right? Before I can give that to others. So I have to show up for me so that I can show up for others. And
yeah,
that was hard at first, but that analogy, that awareness of like when this is full and light, I can show up and give that love and light and serve at even a greater capacity than what I was doing from an empty tank before.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we roll back into, even though this is about like the self love, it brings back into making yourself a priority, right? And creating that space for you, in order to love yourself and in every capacity, right? Because we are perfect just
Mm-hmm.
as we are in this moment, in this
Yeah.
time.
Oh, yes. That also was really hard to kind of like grasp and hold and love because, like historically I've done things I'm not proud of. I've failed. I've made mistakes, and being able to like love and accept myself for even those times when was so it took a lot of just really leaning in and obviously having conversations with you and working with you in that sense of just being able to accept it. There's nothing to forgive. There's just this acceptance of all of those good bad. I don't love that like whole delineation of good bad, but just this idea of like no matter what it was, no matter how it would be perceived, in that moment I was doing the best I could with what I had, as
Hmm.
conscious or unconscious as I may have been. And I just need to accept, not need to, but I'm just going to choose to accept that all of that is part of my journey and what brought me here today. And I freaking love who I am today and
Yeah,
who I'm,
because you're
who I'm,
amazing.
yeah. So, wow, like just that idea of that love and acceptance and just not labeling myself for something that I did in the past
Yeah.
because I've hurt people and I'm not proud of that, but in
Yeah, I mean,
those
we all have
lessons,
our
right?
little, yeah, like our stories, right? Where
Yeah.
we're not our best selves. Like I can
Yeah.
remember many times, like single mom, I was going to school and I know, I'm ashamed to say I was not 100% as a mom with my son, right? And
Mhm,
I
mhm.
have memories of being, exhausted and mean, you
Yeah,
know. I
yeah.
didn't beat him or anything, but
That's probably a good thing.
I certainly he was not, my first priority. My first
Yeah,
priority was to eat some food or
Right.
just ground myself, right?
Yeah, it's like
So,
that pot is boiling over,
yeah.
and whatever his need is, or his little tug at you, at the different phases
Mhm.
of what, and you're just that 1 degree up
Yeah.
on the stove, and
Yeah,
right? So,
totally. Right. Like we can
yeah,
only take so much. And
right.
again, we have to allow ourselves to just forgive ourselves for whatever it is that we're not in that moment the best we can be, but we're still perfect in who we are and the way that we are, right? So allowing ourselves to understand that we aren't going to be 110 every day, and allow
Mhm,
ourselves that space to be that and grow from that. I mean,
mhm.
that's how we evolve, right?
Yeah,
Essentially.
yeah.
So
If we choose to, right? If we choose to,
yeah, if we choose
yeah,
to.
yeah,
Not everybody does, right?
right.
But that's that self-love, that self-worth, self-respect, all of that. It's all encompassing. It's all about that, making yourself a priority, right? So find out what your love language is.
Mm,
You might be
mhm.
surprised.
Yeah,
You
I
might be
probably need to
surprised.
retake the test because I'd almost be curious if acts of service has changed. I can guarantee it's in my top two, but I'd be curious to see if it's still
Do
like
it
number one for me.
tonight. Do it tonight before our next round.
Are
And
you
then
giving
you
me
can,
homework?
yeah,
You just gave me
do,
homework.
do it tonight. I'll,
Okay.
I
Yes,
will do it
mom.
too. I will do
Okay,
it
cool.
too.
Hey, you all get
Because
to do
then,
it too, right? When you're watching
yeah.
this episode.
And then
So,
we can, the next episode, we can share our results.
cool. Yeah. Okay. So switching just a tad. So I kind of want to circle us back into, because
Okay.
we're so good about tangents, right? But I want to
Okay.
circle us back into this idea of self-love, and we've talked a lot about just like that prioritizing ourselves, like pouring into our own cups so we can serve others. So how do we
Hmm.
now bring this into the bedroom for from that sexual health standpoint? Like what, like where do we go next? Like I feel it here, have it here. How do I now move that into a place that's sacred, that's intimate, that I'm sharing that energy with someone else? So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So truthfully, it's really about, knowing who you are, what your needs are, and what your wants are, and respecting them,
Mm.
right? Whatever it is.
So
Because
knowing who you
you,
are, what your needs are, and then
yeah,
respecting them.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Because again, and I'm going to just share this again, right? It doesn't have to be intercourse, right?
Right.
Intimacy is
Mhm.
not just penetration. Intimacy is all encompassing, and I
Mhm.
think people forget that part.
Yeah, for
That,
sure.
how do you, I mean, I'm segueing here, but it like it's also a matter of trust, right?
Mm.
With your
Mm.
partner. Like you are
Mhm.
exposing literally every inch of your body to this other person, to
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
partner, right?
Mhm.
So how can we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, right? Because this is part of
Word.
that act of
Mhm. Mhm.
self-love too, is being vulnerable, I feel, to ourselves first, because I believe, as you know, this is actually where our strength lays, is in our vulnerability, because we create boundaries
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
nobody can cross,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we know them and we respect them and we act
Yeah.
on them,
Mm.
right? So being vulnerable is not a bad thing in my
Right.
point of view,
Right.
right?
Yeah, Brene
But
Brown talks on that too, like how
yeah.
strength comes from that
Mhm.
vulnerable state, right? Sharing your
Are
story or
you
being
are you
open to.
promoting her? Are you promoting her?
I'm not allowed to promote, but she's amazing. So yeah, go ahead. So are you,
And
Kelly.
but that's all part of it, right? That being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, respecting your wants and needs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And kick it up a notch in the bedroom, like be curious, like
Oh, yeah.
wear some lingerie, like have a cocktail, or give how about a massage? Could be your feet, could be your hands. It doesn't have to be
Interesting. Yeah.
a sexual organ, right? It can be anywhere in the body. But if you pleasure that part, and if you're within the space that you feel comfortable, that bond of trust is just
Mhm.
gets stronger and stronger, and you're allowing yourself to be more intimate with your partner, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable being vulnerable because you know what your own boundaries are
Right.
first.
Right. Which is going to vibrate at a different level, which is going to just amplify
Yeah.
that intimacy, no matter what that is for you. So, okay, so totally have this question on something you just said. And so I kind of want to bring it back and just have you maybe take us a little bit with this is this idea of, and I hear this all the time. So this idea of, let's say you've been with somebody, just even a year, but maybe 10 years, 20 years. And I feel like what I have seen is in the earlier stages, in our younger years, we maybe haven't explored, we maybe haven't felt strong in our voice, we haven't utilized in that experience of intimacy, we haven't felt confident enough to use our voice, but we may not even know what we like and don't like. However, cut to 15, 20 years
Exactly.
later, whether it's with the same person or not, we're becoming more connected to our own being. How do I now change or add what I'm asking for, especially in the bedroom or with intimacy, without it being like weird or any kind of like feeling of shame around this idea of like, well, I haven't asked you for this in the past, but now, 15 years in, I'm going to ask you for this. How do we change that within our own wiring and our own being to feel more confident in that we do have a voice and we do have the ability to ask?
So I didn't want to bring this up, but look, we're going in the direction, and hopefully I'm not going to offend anyone. But truthfully, touch yourself, touch your own
Mm-hmm.
body. And again, it doesn't
Exploration.
have to
Yeah.
be in your vagina and your clitoris. Like, you can touch anywhere in your body to get comfortable, right? To massage yourself and wear that lingerie, burn that candle, like use a nice, like a lubricant on your skin, whether it's nice cream, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever piques your
Hmm.
curiosity, use that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there's something towards that. 50 Shades of Grey was one of the top, like, books that were sold. I mean,
Yeah.
like, women and
Could,
men were curious
yeah.
on that side. And of course, there's many topics we can go into within the movie, right? But I'm just using that
Mm-hmm.
as an
Absolutely.
example
Yeah.
that people were curious. They were buying that book for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
People want passion in their lives. People are curious. People want to feel cherished and loved
Yeah.
and awakened,
That's it.
right?
That's
Especially
it.
now, again, bringing in that connection part, right? And
Right.
again, for everyone who is not comfortable in the bedroom, sharing with their partner, that is totally fine. But you have to be vulnerable with yourself first. So have at her. There's all kinds of fun, nice things you can do with your own body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to just kind of put this little, because I've seen this a lot in the clinic, is if you have like a religious upbringing that has taught you otherwise, like
Yep.
Kelly said, like no offense, and we're trying to just be very global on this and
Yep.
this
We're
idea of
just
like
being us. So,
just
take
being
it.
able to come in, yeah, to who you are, what do you love, what feels good, and what feels good might even be how you talk to yourself, right? Like
That's
I
right.
can't expect anyone else to talk to me in a loving way if I don't talk to myself in a loving way. And
Exactly.
like I said before, someone coming from like 20 years of eating disorders and body image issues, like it was very challenging for me to talk to myself in a positive way, in a loving way. How did I expect
Mhm.
anyone else to like talk to me that way, right? And so,
And even
yeah,
though they were talking, right,
I
and
didn't
they were
accept it.
saying the words that
Yeah,
you wanted to
yeah,
hear and that you need to hear, you're
yeah,
not going to accept
yeah.
them.
No,
Just
because
like
I
you
didn't
said.
believe it. I didn't believe it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
totally. Yeah. So so it doesn't have to be like we're saying in the bedroom, but it can be this idea of just like how am I intimate with myself, and this way of
Hmm.
loving myself and having positive self-talk and
Yeah.
positive image and just being vulnerable within my own
Hmm.
being, and then therefore accepting others to also bring that in, or an other person to then add that piece in, right? So well, that
Have,
was really
have
cool, thanks.
Yeah. Have you ever tried that like that experiment to look in the mirror and say, I love myself,
Yeah, naked though. It was a hard,
right?
so hard. I'm literally because like where do your eyes go? They go to like the
I
place of your
know.
body you hate the most, which for me is like my belly abdomen region. And so it
Hmm.
was this idea of like, I'm gonna stand here completely naked, staring at myself in the mirror and say nice things. Like that is
Yeah.
like rewiring or unwiring or clipping the cord or whatever you want to call it from like 40
Yep.
years of imprint.
Yep.
Like
Exactly.
that was hard. That was really
They're
hard, almost
three
like
three
emotionally
letter
struggling.
three
Yeah,
words. They're three
seriously.
simple words,
Yeah.
right?
And for me, what did help with that, since we're kind of on, I wasn't expecting to talk about that today, but hey, we're here,
It just
was
popped in my head, so
totally, I love it. No, it's great. But this idea of, so if we go back to my abdomen, me specifically, I mean, I remember when I was a high level athlete, I didn't have a six pack. I did bodybuilding and didn't have a six pack. Yeah, I'm looking around at all these girls who do, and of course thinking like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I? Ba, 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 right? So my abdomen has probably always been the place of like most dislike, if you will, until um and so I really had to circulate for me coming back to showing appreciation or stating appreciation and like feeling this appreciation for my abdomen in a way of like it is my center. It
yep.
is literally the ability for my abdomen to be strong and mobile is what allowed me to play soccer for as many years as I did at a high
Mhm.
level. It allowed me to carry, so house, feed, nourish, and deliver a
Yep.
human being who is
Yep.
so rad and so amazing. And like
Mhm.
my body did that.
Yep.
And it allows me to laugh. It allows me to have this like inner wisdom in that solar plexus region and that sacral region. Like it
Yep.
is like what connects me. And so when I finally learned and practiced putting into place like the gratitude for my abdomen for everything it has brought
Mhm.
me in my life and
Yep.
43 years of living, boom, like complete different just awareness of my whole being. It was amazing. It was absolutely like the only thing I
Yeah.
regret is that it took me 41 years to figure that out.
Yeah, but we
So
wouldn't be doing this podcast then,
touche, touche.
right?
So yeah, so
So
anyway,
that
that's
yeah,
how it worked for me. But
so to add on to that for me, like I'm 53 now and I have hypothyroidism and I have that gut, that I don't like. I
mm-mm-mm.
feel I have that little apron, I guess that's what it's called, right? Which I don't like, right? So when I'm in my yoga class, of course,
Ah,
there's mirrors everywhere. And when I'm in my pose, right, I look at myself and I force myself to look at my whole body, right?
ah,
And of course, I'm
yes.
like, oh, why can't I be the way I was when I was 30? Like, why can't I have that body
Hmm.
back?
Hmm.
And then I'm in my yoga class and I decompress and I get back and I recalibrate and I'm
Hmm.
like, no, I I held my baby in there, like you said, right?
Yes.
This is part of who
Yes.
I am. I have
Yes.
to, I have scars. I have this. So I must accept all of me, right? I have
Yeah.
to walk my talk. So I
Phew.
too, it's a challenge,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
but I do, and I feel better for it. And I don't
Mhm.
feel like I'm like, you know, oh, I'm beautiful and blah blah blah. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with
Mhm.
loving yourself in with all your
Yes.
scars, with all your so-called imperfections. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about, and accepting all of you because you're going to evolve that much more, right?
Mhm.
In the next 3 to 6 months, anyways. So
Tomorrow.
tomorrow,
Yeah, hopefully you guys watching this episode are already evolving and creating a shift within
that's right.
your awareness and ability to just love yourself at a different
Yeah.
at a different capacity, right? I mean,
And
that's
be vulnerable. Be
yeah,
vulnerable
absolutely.
to
So
yourself,
hard.
right?
Yeah.
And your homework is to check out your five, do the little quiz on the 5 love languages, because I think you'll be surprised. Because we're going to do ours and then we're going to check back in.
Yeah. So next episode, we'll throw those out at the beginning, and then we're gonna move into like self-ask and just standing in your
Yeah.
power. So okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for being here, you guys. We'll see you at episode 3. Sexual health is still the topic because we could talk for years about it, but
As
we're gonna
yeah.
bring it back to you, right? Episode 3. So
Yeah.
thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Mwah! Much love.
Bye.